All right, this is Marty Mayer, the Director of Product Management for ActiveIQ with Sudip Hore, who's the Senior Manager of Product Management. And today we're going to demo ActiveIQ. So when we talk about ActiveIQ, we talk about the face of ActiveIQ, which provides the insights and recommendations to our customers. And we also talk about the brain of ActiveIQ, and that's really where the AI and the ML capabilities are produced in the data fabric hybrid architecture, all built on NetApp. Today we're going to focus on the face. And to set this up, we're going to walk through a couple workflows of one of our personas. This is Joey. He's an IT admin at a Fortune 500 company. He's responsible for several of the sites across the globe for this company. He's very focused on minimizing risk in his environment. He wants to be a lot more efficient. He's doing a lot of firefighting today, and he really wants to be more proactive. And of course, he needs to meet his business needs. Quote here, how do I reduce my operational risk and maximize my uptime in my NetApp environment? So in this demo, we're going to go through and look at some key workflows that enables Joey. We're going to go through risk assessment and planning, and we're going to go through and look at some security vulnerability reviews that Joey's going to drive.
All right. Thank you, Marty. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sudip Hore. I'm part of the ActiveIQ product management team. So today we'll go through the workflow that Joey has at hand here. Again, his focus is mitigating risks and maximizing uptime. So Joey happens to be at lunch, and he has the ActiveIQ mobile app on his smartphone. And there is a new risk that just triggered in his environment, and it came through his mobile app. Joey digs a little bit deeper and taps on the notification on the smartphone, and he's now able to see at least the high-level details of what this risk is about. So he knows now it's a system firmware bug, and it also has some affected systems. And along with that, he also has an idea of the corrective actions. So he quickly wraps up his lunch, and Joey is now back at his desk, and he is now looking at the ActiveIQ web portal, the dashboard of ActiveIQ. So this is a very good point for him to actually start looking at some of the details. Right on the top, he has an overview of the inventory, but right here on the top card, he has an overview of the risks that he has in his environment. In addition to that, there is a drill down of all the risks and the trending that he has for his environment. So to drill down into the details, he has several ways. Either he can click on the card. Generally, he uses this left navigation to click on this health tab in ActiveIQ, and this actually brings him to the health summary of ActiveIQ. And as you can notice here, the risk that was triggered was around system firmware. So he can now see the system firmware bug. He can also see a little bit of details around what this risk is about. And not only that, he's able to see which are the affected systems. But the most important part is he also has the corrective actions to be able to go off and mitigate these risks. So this is a really good overview for him to dig into this risk and mitigate this. And he has all the information that he needs to be able to mitigate these risks. So as we developed this fingerprinting technique over the years, one of the things that our users and customer community really wanted us to do was to really infuse the experience from the NetApp install base, the NetApp community, into this whole view. And this is where this column here around case probability comes in. So what this tells Joey is, for customers who have bumped into this risk, they have had a high probability of this leading up to a support incident or a case. So this really, helps him prioritize this risk in the overall scheme of things, and helps him to go off and mitigate this, create the business justification and the urgency to go off and mitigate this risk. Not only that, Joey also has a way to understand what this particular risk means in terms of mitigation. So for some cases, in these system risks, you may be able to carry out the mitigation, using a very non-disruptive method. It may be a simple configuration change of some kind, or maybe even deployment of a small patch, which may not be disruptive. But in this particular case, looks like this particular risk mitigation does need an outage, and this provides him the operational background around having to go to the IT or the application teams to go off and ask for a change window. So this is really helpful for Joey on a day-to-day basis as he is managing this big install base, to be able to keep on top of these operational risks and be able to mitigate these in a very efficient manner.
Just a question related to the impact and probability. Like, these are risk levels, so the
Right.
likelihood and impact. What are the categories that are available? Is it just low, medium, and high? Is there critical? Is there...
Yeah, so we have currently three impact levels defined. Those are high, medium, and low. And those are really based on disruption potential for that particular risk. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, we also have a category called best practices. So those are really contextual to customers' environments. So depending on whether it really applies to the customer environment, it's up to the customer to really implement those best practices. So those are the four categories.
Okay. Quick question also about the case probability.
Right.
You mentioned that it uses the community feedback. Does it also take into account other aspects or other data sets that you may have?
So currently, what we have done is we have really taken a sample of the community, and the propensity for that sample to be hitting the case. And this is based on direct experience, meaning, when we take the sample and see there is a statistically high, with a high confidence factor, we can say that it's going to lead up to a case. That's what we are, associating. And we are going to talk a little bit more about the technique in one of the follow-on sessions. Yeah.
Oh, also, is the interface available via the mobile, or do you have to go back to?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so all of this is available through the mobile as well. Just because in this context he's back at his desk.
Yeah.
It's more.
I had the same question.
Yeah. So even the corrective action, the affected systems, everything is available through the mobile app as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
This demo is a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate this.
All right. So one of the other things, while Joey is at looking at some of these risks, for his company and his CIO, security has been a big top of mind for him and the company. And one of the things that he has had to do for a long time is to really go through some of the security vulnerability bulletins that storage vendors send out, and then he had to actually correlate those to which are the impacted systems. So ActiveIQ has actually taken this a step further by taking into account some of those fingerprints, and have automated the detection of those vulnerabilities into this new tab called Security Vulnerabilities. So this is another way, going back to Joey's goals around being operationally efficient. This is another way ActiveIQ is helping him to actually reduce all the time he has had to spend in doing some of this analysis manually in the past. So similar to the health summary, the impact levels and the descriptions, affected systems, the corrective actions, all of those are really same. And even we are also trying to bring in the notion of case probability into the security vulnerabilities. Right? So if we can find a statistically meaningful sample for a particular vulnerability, it would pop up in the case probability column, indicating to him how other customers are seeing this risk pan out in their environment. So while he's at reviewing some of these risks, these emerging risks, one of the things that he's noticing going through the corrective actions is, upgrade is kind of the corrective action for a lot of these risks. And that is a big operational efficiency issue that he has had over time. Right? When you are trying to upgrade an environment, there is a lot involved in that, meaning planning. But one of the big things there is, which version do I go to? Right? And ActiveIQ it happens to help him out these days a fair bit, in the sense that it has now introduced this notion of what we call the risk mitigation advisor. So this is really a cool, what-if planning tool that allows Joey to select a target version of operating system and see how his operational risk level would change if he upgraded to this newer version of software. Not only that, the really fun part about this mitigation advisor is this also brings in the experience that other customers have had when they have had to upgrade their environment. So this last column here really indicates the percentage of risks that are resolved after upgrade, and it shows a confidence factor. And this 100% confidence may not apply, but 100% means that all the customers who really upgraded to this particular version of ONTAP have seen this risk being mitigated after they did the upgrade. So this is a really cool tool. Prior to this, Joey had to work with the account teams or other NetApp folks to really get this information, and that too in a very anecdotal way. This is hard data driving prescriptive actions and also infusing the experience of the NetApp community into the ActiveIQ intelligence platform.
Okay, thanks, Sudip. And so just to add a little bit more color on a couple of those things you saw there. So the API that I described that's in beta is basically taking that same information that you're seeing either on the web or the mobile and being able to consume that. So we see a lot of opportunity for customers to automate this whole workflow of prescriptive risk. The other thing related to the question on the categories, we have kind of the high, medium, and low. We also allow our customers to be able to acknowledge a risk. I mean, if they've studied this and they don't think that this risk applies to them or their environment, they can acknowledge that. It goes away from the dashboard. You can go back and look at it later, but it allows them to take some action and acknowledge that they have clarified this. Okay, so going back to Joey. Joey's goals, again, as a quick reminder, is all about reducing risks in his environment. He's been very busy firefighting. Now he's gone through his risk assessment planning. He's found his security vulnerabilities, and he's now a fire preventer versus a firefighter. And he has more time in his day to work on strategic projects. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Joey's counterpart, Adrian, who is an IT architect. Adrian is very focused on driving efficiencies within the infrastructure. She's responsible for planning for growth within our company, infrastructure growth, and extremely interested in lowering IT costs. Her quote, "How can I maximize my ROI on my infrastructure?" So in the workflows that we're going to go through for Adrian, we're going to demonstrate how she can identify areas to improve, get more efficiencies in her environment, uncover workloads that may not be that efficient and could be targets to move to a different platform such as HCI. And we're going to walk through how she can plan for her overall growth. Okay, Sudip.
All right. Thank you, Marty. So Adrian has some, really stiff goals. She is, trying to meet some of the, budgetary needs, and her main goal is to really, maximize the investment that they have made with NetApp. So ActiveIQ is her place to go. And coming here, one thing that she really loves is the portal gives her a quick overview of her install base. In addition to that, it has other stuff that her counterparts need. But going down on the dashboard, these are some of the really key areas that Adrian is interested in. Obviously, she's going to look at specifically this efficiency widget here on the dashboard today. She really wants to maximize what they're getting from the NetApp environment. And on the widget here, she has a way to look at some of the systems that are performing at the highest efficiency ratios. But along with that, she also sees that there are gaps in best practices that potentially they could implement to even bump up the ratio from where they are today. So she decides to take a look at a couple of these. So she even picks the first one on the list, the first controller that's available on the list. And as soon as she does that, she's now at the controller level looking at the efficiency this particular controller is delivering currently. And she now has some more details about the efficiency. She has the contributions of the different features as well as some of the capacity details. But where she really wants to dive in is to look at how this controller is performing compared to similar kinds of controllers that are out there at NetApp. And this is a really cool way to take a look at it. So she can see that this particular controller is running way above the normal efficiency ratio that NetApp has gathered from similar kind of controllers. It's almost 6 to 7 times. But at the same time, she's also seeing some improvement opportunities. Even though the controller is running at a very high efficiency ratio, she has 3 improvement opportunities that she could potentially focus on. So she quickly clicks those, and she can now drill into the specific opportunities associated with this controller. So looks like there are some configuration issues with the background deduplication not being enabled. That's one gap she sees. And she also sees other issues such as efficiency features that are not enabled on this particular controller. So similar to the screen that we saw when Joey was looking at system risks, the best practices also have a level of detail and a corrective action associated with this. So she can now take this to Joey to be able to review some of these best practices and see if it makes sense to make some of these configuration changes. So while she's looking at this, one thing that strikes her is in her environment, more than the controller and the storage, what really matters are the mission critical workloads that they're running. What she wonders is, are there ways to really go down even deeper and see some context sensitive ratios for certain workloads that she has in a particular production cluster. So she knows the name of the cluster and searches by that cluster name, and in ActiveIQ, it brings up the dashboard for that particular cluster. On the cluster dashboard, along with some of the other details, she has a way to look at the efficiencies of the workloads running on that particular cluster. So this is where she really wants to dig in and see how certain workloads are performing. So looks like on the top dashboard here, she can see some of the workloads running with the best efficiencies, but she wants to dig deeper and look at how some of these workloads are performing with regards to other similar workloads in NetApp's environment. So she now has a way to see each of these workloads and see what are the recommended peer ratios for similar kinds of workloads that are running in NetApp's environment. And looks like there are some workloads, for example, the couple of ones at the top here, MongoDB, as well as MySQL, these are running at really high and better efficiency ratios. But she has a few of these other applications, workloads, that are running lower. Along with showing the peer ratios, what we do within ActiveIQ is to show users the best practices associated with each of these applications. So this makes the lives of the architects as well as the admins a lot easier. Previously, what we used to really do is to write all this tech reports or best practice papers and so forth, and throw it out on our support site or other portals, hoping users would find these someday and go through these best practices. We are able to bridge that gap by bringing in these content in a very context-sensitive manner in the context of this specific workflow that Adrian is going through. So this is a tremendous productivity booster, and it provides Adrian enough tools right now to go back to Joey and get a review done for some of these applications.
Quick question. How much of the information available for the architects is available to be queried from an API?
So our APIs are still going through some beta testing, but generally, most of the stuff that you see on the main dashboard are available currently in that beta program.
Okay, because what I'm trying to get at is your architect, they have to log into ActiveIQ. Depending on your organization, that may not really be a real scenario. They'll want to know, am I running efficiently? So querying an API could tell them that.
So the intent is to make everything available through APIs, but it's happening step by step.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of the genesis of us building the APIs. Meaning, we have had a lot of requests over time. People asking, can we get it in a more automated manner, fed into the workflows that we have, and that's why we are investing in APIs.
That is the right question.
Right.
You asked the right question.
Yeah. All right. So while Adrian is at this, one of the other things that I mentioned at the beginning of the demo, she's also into a little bit of issue with her budget and planning, and she needs some ways to really grow her environment, and she also knows there is a particular server refresh project that's going on, and she's looking at opportunities to take a couple of these workloads, particularly this virtual server data store workload, into a HCI cluster. And she wants a really easy way, a planning tool that she could use to potentially plan that out. And she wants to get an understanding of what does it take to put this workload into a HCI solution, what kind of additional nodes or compute, storage or compute nodes that she needs. So to do that, she uses the ActiveIQ Expansion Advisor. Right, and this is again available right from the ActiveIQ portal, and she knows, which HCI cluster she would put this on. So she types in the cluster details, and it shows her the existing configuration of the cluster. So it does have, some compute and storage, but she would probably need more. And from Joey, she has the specifications of the workload that she needs to add. So as soon as she gets into the second screen here of the Expansion Advisor, she has two options. She can either grow an existing workload or add new workloads to this cluster. So she chooses to add new workload, and she types in the requirements for CPU, memory, and she has also gotten some details around efficiencies she need. And you saw in the previous screen, that particular workload was not running at really the level of efficiency that she wanted it to. And she types in all of those details, and what she gets as a recommendation is it's a very prescriptive recommendation about the new hardware she would need to add. Right? And she gets the details of the additional compute that's needed and the additional storage that would be needed to add that workload to this particular cluster. And what's also very helpful for her is she can take the next step to actually submit this to NetApp to get a code for this additional hardware that she needs. Right? So go ahead.
Can I put a label on that workload? Like,
yes.
Hey, this is for Project X or Database X or whatever.
Yeah.
And also, if I do have a certain type of common workload,
right,
is there some way to not? I mean, it's great that I can put in my specifics, right? If I know it's 50% growth or here or there, or what my read writes should be. But is there some way to use that community wisdom to give me some advice, like, hey, your peers are doing this?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah,
But
and I think back in the previous demo, we were showing the peer comparison, and that's where we derive, looking through the community for specific workloads, what is the average efficiency for this type of workload, and we're bringing that into the application so they can understand, is this good or is this bad?
Okay.
So in terms, just one more point on so we in ActiveIQ we have this notion of what we call application or workload tagging. So users generally can go in and tag any kind of workload they may have. They also have ways of so this is almost a feedback loop. In the space of community wisdom, it allows us, and Shankar is going to go more into that.
Great, thanks, Sudip. And just to add on to a couple of things that we saw here. So the expansion advisor for HCI, this is something that we're looking at on our roadmap to make more of these capabilities available across our platforms to really drive an easier way for our customers to engage, to do what-if planning, and really make it easy to see where they should be moving things around. So that's a big focus area for us. So going back to a reminder of Adrienne, IT architect, she was very interested, obviously, in planning for growth, driving efficiencies, getting the most that she can out of her NetApp assets so that she can lower cost. So we went through finding areas to improve, finding where there are workloads that are not maximized, what are areas that could be improved, and then we went through a workflow of looking at how we can add to an existing HCI cluster. So the outcome is that she was able to find opportunities to save money, to use existing infrastructure, to get more out of what she already has. That's really a big focus area for us within ActiveIQ, is to provide that predictive analytic on what steps should I do to maximize the value that I get and avoid disruptions.